In this corner, we have the Arcade1Up Countercade version of Galaga. And in this corner, we have the Numskull Quarter Arcade version of Galaga. In this video, we're going to put them head to head and find out who the true champion of Galaga is. Hey everybody, it's Chris from FamilyGeekery, and today we're going to be checking out this Arcade1Up Countercade and this Numskull Quarter Arcade, both versions of the classic arcade game Galaga. And I happened to pick both these up from the same collector, I guess, local collector you would call him. And I thought this would be a good time to go ahead and put these head to head to find out which one's better. Now, when they first came out, both of these are probably in the same kind of ballpark of retail price. Let's say in the $150 to $199 range retail version. Now, some of them go up in price, like these Numskulls seem to be very collectible. And then some of them go down in price because they made a whole lot of these, and you can usually find these on Marketplace for pretty cheap. So I was able to pick them both up for the same price. So it's going to turn out for me to be a good comparison to see which of these is the better value. So we're going to rank these as we play around with them and kind of score them on different categories of screen quality, control quality, the overall durability, the authenticity, the overall fun value of them, and then overall value of them. Now, I've been a long time collector of arcade games. I've built arcade games, I've restored arcade games, I've done all kinds of stuff with them. And whenever I tell a friend or family member that arcades are my hobby, about half of them always say the word Galaga first. Like, ooh, do you have the game Galaga? And that's, sometimes they pronounce it Galaga, sometimes they butcher it completely. But it seems like it always ends up to be on everybody's favorites list. And I think that's because it was in that classic era of early arcade games, and you had games like Pac-Man that were kind of predictable once you figured out, that it is a maze and there is patterns to it. You either decided, hey, let's learn this and let's be good at this, or you decided, no, I'm going to play something different. But with Galaga, even if there is patterns and there is strategies to it, it's just fun just to move back and forth and smash that fire button and try to see how high scored you can get. So this is a perfect game to compare on two of these little systems here, comparing what's probably the most accessible version of Galaga and probably the most collectible version of Galaga. So let's go ahead and start off by taking a look at this Arcade1Up Countercade. Alright, so starting off with the Arcade1Up Countercade version. Now, Arcade1Up is a company that everybody's heard of. You can find them at Walmart, you can find them at Best Buy, you can probably find them at Kohl's. They're all over the place. And they put out a decent product for the money. As a arcade enthusiast, when these things first came out, I thought, oh my gosh, just another cheap piece of garbage that's coming out. Cheaply made, cheap reproductions of the games. But as I spent some time looking at them, sure, they're cheaply made, but they're not bad. They're actually a pretty good value for what you get. And I'll be the first to admit that I own a lot of Arcade1Up products. I've got some full-size ones, I've got a bunch of the Countercades, I've got some Partycades, and I even have one of the cocktail tables. So I'm no stranger to Arcade1Up, and I was happy to find this one, like I said, for pretty darn cheap today, and that's the one we're going to take a look at. Now, of the categories of things that we're going to look at, let's look at the screen first. Now, the screen is a good size. A lot of people say that this 8-inch screen, is way too small and you should upgrade it to a 10-inch screen, but you're not going to be sitting very far away from this thing. This is going to be sitting on a desk or a table right in front of you. You're not going to be standing near as far away from it as you would be if you were at an arcade playing a full-size cabinet. So I think the size of the screen itself is pretty good. The overall height of the cabinet, they're about the same between this and the Numskull. They're both about 16 inches tall. So having an 8-inch screen, 8-inch diagonal screen, I think is plenty fine. As far as the quality of the screen, though, it is what it is, I guess. The viewing angles on it are not very good. Even standing at this angle here that I am while I'm recording, it's almost completely washed out. But you're never going to be standing like this. This is a one-player cabinet. You're going to be sitting right in front of it, staring right at it. So I think that's okay. It is an LCD, and there's really nothing you can do about that. You know, an arcade purist is going to want a CRT, but I built a Galaga machine actually with a 10-inch CRT VGA screen, and the thing was just freaking huge and heavy, so it's just completely impractical. I never even use it anymore. So having an LCD, you lose some quality, but it makes up for it in the fact that it's super light. It doesn't take very much power at all. This whole thing runs off of 5 volts, and so I think that's okay too. So the next category we're going to talk about is the controls. Now this would be arcade size controls. A lot of people will take these and they'll change these out for better quality joysticks and better quality buttons. But I think for what you get, it's fine. They are very clicky. This is a true two-way. So I've got some of these taken apart, and this thing is true two-way. It's got somewhat of a restrictor plate on it, if you will, to stop it from going up and down, but it still goes up and down. But you can hear that there's no micro switches on the up and down side. So there are actually only 2 micro switches for left and right. So I think there's a little bit too much play this way. I think on the real cabinet it's a lot more constricted to just left and right. But again, it's pretty good. You're not going to miss any corners or anything because there is no corners to miss. So that's fine. The buttons themselves, they don't have as clicky of a feel as a true like Haps would, but I think it's fine. It's not too tight, it's not too loose. The travel is pretty good, so that's fine. The other controls you have, the on-off switch, that's handy to have right there in front of you. It kind of makes the control panel, you know, look a little ugly, if you will, you know, less authentic, but it's right there. It's very handy. And then the volume, this volume is a left and right incrementing volume slider. So that's pretty good. It actually shows you on the screen what the volume is. So that's a decent control. You don't have to worry about having like a potentiometer that would get dirty or crusty and start crackling. It works out pretty good. So next up we're going to look at the durability. And this thing, it's built, I'm guessing, with 8-inch wood. So nothing wrong with that. I think the sides are plenty strong. You do have some plastic to it. I think that's just to either make it cheaper to build or lightweight, more lightweight, which is fine. But for the most part, it's a whole lot of 1/2-inch wood, including the control panel. And I'm pretty sure that this control panel could take a pretty good beating. You could smash on this thing all day long and you're not going to push one of the buttons through. Now as far as the joystick, I'm not sure if this joystick is just screwed up underneath because there are no, you know, bolts going all the way through it. You don't see any carriage bolts going through the whole joystick unless it's underneath this overlay, which I doubt. So I'm guessing it's either like screwed up from the bottom. So I think if you abuse this joystick enough, you may be able to damage the control panel. But for the most part, I think it's pretty well built. It's very sturdy, so I think durability is pretty good. Next up, we've got authenticity. Now, I think this one, it's no shocker, this one's going to lose in that category. But again, that you're getting a countercade, which is a kind of nifty concept. It's not going to look exactly like a Namco, you know, design. It has some of the basic shapes of a Namco cabinet, but it's not a true replica by any means. And that's because it's a countertop instead of a full-size upright machine. It's got some pretty good, you know, all the graphics are all good. They're matching. The artwork here is a good homage to the real artwork because you do have to have some customizations for the fact that it's not the right size, not the right shape. You've got extra controls on here that you might not on a real cabinet. So I'll forgive it for that. It's got some instructions here which are nice. They're not too out of place, but it's nice to have some basic instructions to know how to push these buttons to get in and out of the games. But I think overall they did a real good job with the artwork on this one. I think it looks great. Next up, you got overall fun, and I think that's going to be somewhat determined by the game itself. And Galaga's a fun game, no doubt about it. Everybody loves it. So this particular cabinet has 2 separate games. It's got Galaga and it's got Galaga 88. So if we're talking about overall fun, I'm guessing you're getting twice the fun because you've got the original and then you've got the updated version of it. So that's a nice little touch to have a second game in there. And I could easily see this being taken out at a home party or something like that. Throw it up on the kitchen table, have a couple different people playing one or two player versions of the game, pass the thing back and forth, easy enough to lift up and move it over to the chair next to you. And I could see this as being a good crowd pleaser in that type of setting. And the last category, we've got overall value. So for the price, you get 2 games, which is obviously better than 1, but it would have been nice if it had like 6 games in it. That would give it a lot more value. But you're getting one of the all-time favorite games, you're getting a bonus game, you're getting decent controls, good controls, a decent screen, and a nice big unit that is going to be durable and last you for a while. So overall value, I think it's pretty good for what it is. Now, if you've been a collector of Arcade1Ups, or if you've watched them over the years, you know that when they come out, they're one price, and then somewhere in their lifetime, they're a lot cheaper. So these things may be close to $200 when they first get launched. You may find them at a Walmart or on an online retailer for close to $99 or $75 as they start to clearance out, especially when they start getting rid of one particular game so that they can get the new games in. They drop drastically in price. So my recommendation to you is, if you want the best value, just keep an eye on it and watch it, and eventually it's going to drop down in price. So I think that's going to wrap it up for the Arcade1Up Countercade. Let's go ahead and pull the Numskull over here. Alright, so if you're not familiar with this particular version of Galaga here, the Numskull is a company that's been putting out these quarter arcades, starting with, I think, Pac-Man was their first one. Galaga was their second ever, so this is number 2. It's no longer made, but they're out there. You can find them on eBay. You can find them on the used market. And they keep on putting out new ones. And they are, like I said, very collectible because they are just great showpieces, and they actually work as a game also. So if we start off by looking at the screen, which is going to be very hard to see through the camera here, but if I tip this thing forward, you can see that it's got a decent screen. I think it's like a 5-inch LCD, and just looking at it, I think quality-wise, this screen is a little bit higher quality than the one in the Arcade1Up. It's got better viewing angles. It's a lot crisper because it's angled back exactly like the arcade version is. There is no glare on top of it. This thing here is just all glare, which is fine. I've got a bunch of studio lights on, so there's going to be some reflections and stuff. But this one, when you're staring at it, and especially if we tip it forward like this, you can see that the glare is completely cut down by the shape of it, and the screen just looks great. Now as we move over to controls, obviously if this thing is a quarter scale arcade cabinet, and that's why they call it the Quarter Arcade, it's exactly a quarter scale replica of the real arcade, then you're not going to have arcade size controls. So you have tiny little controls, tiny little buttons, but out of all the different arcades like this, I've played a lot of the ones that you've probably seen in Target and Best Buy and stuff, the little cheap ones that are $20-$30 each. These controls actually feel really nice compared to all the other ones. So the left-right joystick, you can actually hear the clickiness of it. So it's got a real good, you know that you're making your lefts and your rights. It is completely restricted up and down, and you can see that they've actually cut a little slot in here. I'm guessing there's probably a restrictor plate of some sort in there also. And it's a very short throw. So you can get left to right pretty quickly and not have a huge, throw left and right. So I think your reaction time is going to be a little bit quicker on this one. The buttons themselves, there's only so much you can do to make a button this size feel good, and they've figured out how to do it. It's got a decent plunger size, so it's got a good travel to it. It's got a good, not so much a clickiness, but there's no doubt when you're actually firing with it. So I say they're great. They're not true to scale as far as like the width to the height of the button, because they're not to scale compared to something like this, where the height of the button is very, very short and the width is big. But they have to do that to give you this authentic feel to pushing the button. So I think that's pretty good. In addition to the controls up here on the control panel, we've got these coin returns down here are actually the coin ups. So as you push them, it gives you credits for the 1-up and 2-up. So that's a nice touch, leaving you to not have any extra buttons or controls on the control panel itself. Now, to give you the extra controls we do have in the back here, instead of having the power switch and the volume right on the front, we've got the power switch and the volume right on the bottom, and then there's a place to charge also. So this actually has a tiny battery in it that you can charge it up, and you can run it without the battery, or you can run it right off of 5 volts. It gives you a micro USB cable that goes right into any USB charger. So it's nice to have those controls back there, and that's an addition to the authenticity, because that's where they would be, that's where that power switch would be usually, or up top here on some cabinets. You can't see where I'm pointing to, but up top here, or the power cord is going to be back in the bottom. So next up, let's talk about the durability. Now this thing is well made, and it's made out of quality components, but I don't think there's any comparison to a half-inch thick wood with this. I think if you tried, you could damage this thing pretty good. If it fell or if it dropped off your desk or something, then you would definitely bang up the sides or even possibly crack something. So durability wise is not going to be its strongest point, but the overall build quality of it is really nice. It is very well put together, and I'm impressed with the finish that they can get on this to make it look exactly like the Namco cabinet. Which brings us up to, obviously, the strongest point of this one is the authenticity. That's what Numskull has gone out for from the get-go, is to make it as authentic as they can, and of course they've nailed it. So you've got an actual 1/4 scale replica of a Galaga cabinet, complete with a backlit marquee. And not only is it a backlit marquee, but they make a lot of the Arcade1Ups nowadays that have the backlit marquee, but this actually has a glow to it that looks like an old incandescent light bulb at the arcade. So that's a nice touch. Obviously the coin door is a nice touch with the working coin returns for your credit up buttons. All the artwork, you know, the kickplate artwork here, the CPO artwork, the bezel artwork, everything, the side art, it's all perfect. The shape of the thing is perfect. The dimensions are perfect. I don't think you're going to get any better authenticity other than just going and building a full-size upright version of this particular game. Now when it comes to overall fun, obviously again we've talked about how that's dependent on the game first, but you have to have good controls and a good screen and all that kind of combined to have fun with it. Because we've all played, like I said, those silly little cheap arcade machines, and they're novel and they're cute, but they're not necessarily fun. And this one I played a couple games on, and yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It may not be as versatile as where you put it. Like, you're going to have to put it on a desk and make sure that your head is at the right space to get this viewing angle right, because if you're looking at it straight towards it, you're not going to have a good, view of it. If you're looking at it too far down, then you're going to be obstructed by the top here. So you've got to make sure that it's at the right height for you. But sitting here and controlling it, even with my big hands, I was able to control the left, right, and the button smashing just fine. And it was a great reproduction of the real game. So yes, this thing is definitely fun. Now, it only has the one game, but in my opinion, the original Galaga was a lot better than Galaga 88 anyways. So if you're going to only have one game, you might as well have one of the best ever. And then the last category, if we want to talk about the value of this, that really just depends on what your intent with this particular machine is. If you wanted something that was just an easy way to play your favorite arcade game, then probably the Arcade1Up is going to be the better value. Because you get the two games, because it's a little bit easier to have a couple different people watching you play at the same time, that's going to be the better value. But if you're looking for something that's both a combination of a true representation of playing the game and a great display piece also, then this is definitely the way to go. You can actually play the game on it, and you can put this up on a shelf, and it's going to turn every eye that walks into that room, and someone's going to say, does that thing really work? And you're going to push the button and you're going to blow their mind. So I think that's going to wrap it up for the Numskull. So now it's time to do a quick comparison. Alright, now to review how the two compare to each other in all those categories that we just talked about. And these are just my opinions, and I will tell you that it's hard to come up with these conclusions, but that's what you came here for, so that's what I'm going to do. So starting off with the screen. Now I think we've got a pretty close tie here, and let me explain that. We've got one screen over here which is bigger, and we've got one screen over here which is, well, I would say much better. So we've got a higher quality screen, probably a better looking screen over here, but this one just makes it a little bit easier if you've got a couple people watching you. So I'm going to call this a tie between the two, even though personally, if I was just by myself, I think that would be the winner. Next up, we got controls. Now, I don't think there's any debate to the fact that this is probably the easier to use control on the Arcade1Up. You got a full-size stick, full-size buttons. Even though these over here are incredibly impressive as far as what they're able to do and the controls you're able to get and the feel you're able to get from such small little components, I think overall this is the more comfortable playing control panel. So I'm going to give the win in this category to the Arcade1Up. Next up is durability, and I think that's a no-brainer. The Arcade1Up, I think, is going to be the one that wins the durability test. It's just built with a lot bigger components, a lot bigger wood. It's a lot more solid, even though this one is well built and the attention to detail is amazing. I think durability wise, if I was going to let a kid play with that, and I think that's the final determining factor, if I was going to put one of the two of these in front of a kid and walk away and not worry about the thing being smashed in, this is the one I would give them. Next up, we've got authenticity, and I don't think we need to spend but about 2 seconds on this. The Numskull Quarter Arcade wins that one by a mile. Next up, we've got overall fun. Again, this is a hard one to compare because it's going to depend on your usage of them. We've got one here that is easy to throw in front of somebody and they're going to know exactly what to do because they've grabbed onto a control like this in the arcade several times and they know exactly how to play this game. And if you put this in front of them, it's going to be impressive, but they're going to be pinching the thing left and right. And I think overall fun, because you've got the second game on this one, I think I'm going to nudge it over towards the Arcade1Up for overall fun. And last but not least, overall value. Again, this is going to really depend on what your intents are. Is this going to be something that you play, something that you set out for other people to play, or is it something that's just going to sit on a shelf and look amazing? And if that's the case, between those options, I think the overall value has to be nudged over towards the Arcade1Up. As much as I personally think that this is the better machine of the two, overall value-wise, because you got the fact that it's got 2 games, because you can throw this in front of anybody, adult or child, and let them have fun with it, because the starting price is not always going to be the price of this thing. The price is probably going to drop, and especially if you pick one up used, it's going to be much lower than it was new, as opposed to something that's becoming more and more collectible and the price is going up on these. I think the value has to be in the Arcade1Up. So if you tally all those things together, then you see that the winner, and I'm going to use air quotes for this, the winner is Arcade1Up, but again, that's just based simply on these silly categories I came up with. It's just based on a generalized use case. I've already told you that I think that this is the much more impressive machine, the Numskull, much more beautiful machine, much more impressive machine, but the overall winner in all those categories, I think, goes to the Arcade1Up because it's versatility. So if you can let me know down in the comments below, without flaming me, which of these you like the best, go ahead and let me know. If you've got either one of these at home and you've got some tips on it, let us know that also down in the comments below. One final thing I wanted to touch on is how you power these. I forgot to mention, this one I did say it came with a USB cable. You can charge up the battery and use that without any power cord in it. And this one comes with an AC adapter. The Arcade1Up comes with an AC adapter with a little barrel jack back there to connect to. Now I will mention that you can get a barrel connector to USB plug for this because this is running off of 5 volts. It is 5 volts and 3 amps, so you would have to have a power brick that would supply over 2 amps, hopefully close to 3 amps. Then you can get that USB adapter cable and you can run this thing off of a little battery bank. So that being said, either one of these could be portable if you add the battery bank to this. I'll leave some links down in the description below to different types of accessories that can make that happen for the Arcade1Up. And if you've come up with a solution yourself, let us know down in the comments. I think that's going to wrap it up for this head-to-head fight between the two Galaga machines. Let me know what you thought about it. If you liked it, then give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more stuff about arcades, go ahead and check out the rest of the channel. I've got plenty of arcade content on there and lots more to come, so hit that subscribe button also. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. I thank you as always for watching, and until next time, peace out and geek out.